everyone. Welcome to Yale College Voices, where we amplify the stories and expertise of those shaping the Yale College experience. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Darice Corey, your host, and today I'm joined by Dr. Fahmeed Hyder, an esteemed professor of biomedical engineering and radiology and biomedical imaging at Yale. So welcome, Fahmeed. I'm so happy that you had the time to join us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. So Dr. Hyder is also the head of Trumbull College. And if you don't mind, is it okay if I call you Fahmeed?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
That's what I prefer. Yeah.
Thank you. So Fahmeed, I'm just going to share your amazing bio with our listeners, and then we'll just have a conversation today. So Dr. Fahmeed Hyder is a Yale professor, an award-winning scientist and entrepreneur. He's a pioneer of magnetic resonance technologies focusing on early metabolic biomarkers of brain disorders from degeneration, e.g. aging or Alzheimer's disease, to cancer. His prolific scientific career, spanning 3 decades, has received continuous NIH research funding to enable training of scholars worldwide, publishing impactful papers, and securing patents on cancer imaging. Dr. Hyder has spent his entire professional career at Yale University. He's a professor of biomedical engineering at the School of Engineering and Applied Science and a professor of radiology and biomedical imaging at the School of Medicine. He is the head of the MRS group at the Magnetic Resonance Research Center and program director of quantitative neuroimaging with magnetic resonance research. As head of the MRS group, he directs strategic vision of all faculty within the MRS group and the MRRC at large. He was the founder of QNMR Core Center, which was supported by the P30 grant mechanism from NINDS for a decade, which now operates as the QNMR research program, utilizing high-field preclinical scanners and many other imaging methods to investigate disease in a multifaceted manner. Recently, he founded Innova Cyclics. Did I say that correctly? Innova Cyclics, a biotech startup developing next-generation MRI contrast agents that are smart and biocompatible. Finally, he was also appointed as head of Trumbull College, which is one of the 14 residential colleges within the Yale College system. Head of college serves as a Yale ambassador, presiding over the college to shape social and intellectual lives of students. So thank you so much, Fahmeed. I'm so happy that, I know we went through some scheduling and, I realize your schedule is so crazy. So I really appreciate that you could join me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And especially the fact that we're meeting is actually an honor.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you for keeping me in your loop.
Yes.
To schedule this.
Oh, absolutely. And I wanted to, because I found your bio so fascinating. Of course, I know nothing about biomedical research, but it's just extremely, just very fascinating. And I was just curious if you don't mind sharing, maybe some of your early days or childhood memories, or how did you gravitate towards this area?
So my earliest days are informed by where I grew up. I'm originally from Bangladesh. But my earliest days, shortly after I was born, and much of those experiences still shape me to the present days. So we got very early exposure to live what it means to live in a sustainable way. So I spent a few years with my family in a refugee camp because it was just around the time when I was about 3 years old or so, 3-4 years old, when the War of Independence was occurring between Bangladesh and Pakistan. And so what it means to live in a sustainable way is that you learn how to reuse things, recycle things, and also produce things in a way that is not only for the short term, but also for the long term. But upon returning to Bangladesh after its independence, some of the most, memorable moments I can recall are the gatherings that we used to have at our home. I'm from a huge family, 7 brothers.
Oh, wow.
I'm number 5
Wow.
in that list. Is the dinners we'd have at home. So my parents made sure that there was at least one meal that we had together as a family. And dinner was the ideal time because schooling would take us away, work hours for my father. My mother was working essentially at home. And so the dinners were amazing, with everyone having their input into their activities, exchanging what transpired through the day, but also inevitably we would always have an additional person or two.
Oh, really?
Right. So that gave me a great sense of community, and that community exchange happens more spontaneously with food as the catalyst.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so those are the most memorable moments. But being from a middle-class family, the approach, being a large family at that, all hands on deck. So everybody contributed the ways that they could. So those are some of the early memories from my childhood. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And do you find that, and I know we'll get to more details in terms of your role as head of Trumbull College, but do you find that you sort of take, all of that experience kind of feeds into how you interact with students and just within the community there?
Yeah, so a lot of what happens in college is some of the same principles. We're actually from very different backgrounds. The college is made up of students from a variety of different backgrounds, and we're living together. With our varying interests and sometimes contrasting interests, and how to communicate with one another is something I learned through those interactions at the dinner table. And that's kind of what we also try to emulate within the residential college system, is having conversations, sometimes difficult conversations, but using these conversations to build community. And sometimes bridges need to be formed that hopefully will last.
Right.
And in this day and age, there's a lot of awareness about sustainability, from the food that we eat to the constructions that we take for granted. All of those are things that other parts of the world had experienced, are still experiencing, that are amazing fields of study right now within the Yale College system.
Wow.
So yeah, it's almost full circle. So
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And so I remember, for those who don't know, my second guest on the podcast was your wife, Anita Sharif Hyder, and Anita and I knew each other from the Emerge program, or that was where we first met, and when we first talked on the podcast, it was so funny. When we first met, it was like one of those. She was just a welcoming personality, and going back to when she first introduced me to you, I met you in the college dining hall, which, so if you could tell me a little more about that, like if do you go there often, or is that how you sort of interact with students on a more frequent basis?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do spend a fair amount of time in the dining halls. That's one of the best ways to engage with students. But there are specific events that we organize within the college that fulfill the aspirations of wide-ranging students. So teas, as you well know, are one of the most attractive ways of not only raising the importance of a topic or a subject matter that students are passionate about, but also opening it up to the larger community, not just students, but also everyone within the university system, and actually beyond the university into the city as well. The teas are open to essentially everyone.
Oh, that's awesome! I didn't realize that.
Right. So about the dining hall, yes, we do engage in a lot of conversations with students within the dining hall. Sometimes it's just spontaneous. Other times they're curated. That's one of the best times to actually catch up with our students because they have such difficult schedules. And with regard to Anita, I mean, of course, she's my better half. And so I guess the reason why our partnership has been so fruitful is because we are both we both believe in this craft of entertaining. We used to do this before being in Trumbull College within our home, and I guess the word got around.
Right.
and so we continue that tradition together. We're great collaborators. We each have our niche in organizing events, and so some of the events have been quite impactful already in the short time that we've been at Trumbull.
Oh, that's so awesome. And I think that's one of the things that I admire so much about both of you, because we held an event, I think that was last year for the podcast guests, and it was just that feeling of welcome, feeling welcome in your home, just I don't know, I felt like you were, it was just nice to see in the college and see the two of you there and how you interacted with everyone and again, just that welcoming feeling. And that was what, drew me to Anita when we first met and that's amazing. And so I was curious if just to kind of back up a little, I know I jumped from like childhood to to the college, but so I'm wondering, like, what was there something you mentioned the sustainability? So how did that progress into like your early college years, or shaping your interests, leading into your studies?
Oh wow, that's a great segue. So actually. What really got me into college, so I went to Wabash College, it's a small liberal arts college, middle of Indiana. And in high school, I probably spent more time pursuing things that I was passionate about. And one of several things outside of the classroom that I was passionate about was music.
Oh, interesting.
So some of my iconic figures in music actually happen to be from the United States. Some of the names I recall: Herbie Hancock,
yes,
Dave Grusin, obviously Bruce Hornsby in the mid 80s, even now. So a lot of piano musicians, jazz primarily.
Oh, wow.
So they were my inspiration. And so I spent a lot of time at that craft. And it was a decent form of income, to be honest, in the city of Dhaka. And I would even argue that that's what got me into college.
Oh, wow.
Because I didn't write a personal statement. Instead, I sent a recording
Wow.
of one of my performances as my statement.
Oh my goodness. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
You play piano or
Yes.
other
Piano,
instruments as well?
organ was the primary instrument that I had access to. Pianos were out of reach. Then I could afford a keyboard, an electrical keyboard.
Wow.
So that was my entrance into at least considering, pondering, applying to college within the United States. And I got into a few, and Wabash College was one of the handful of colleges that actually considered my application quite seriously, and very grateful for that amazing opportunity. And once I got to Wabash, I had to pivot a little bit because being a music major at that college meant learning the history of Renaissance
Okay.
music in Europe. So while I was intrigued by that, that wasn't really my cup of tea that I wanted to pursue, and a variety of other factors. So while I spent a lot of time playing music and a few other things in terms of organization of sporting events and concerts and things like that, I did spend a decent amount of time in the classroom.
Really?
And I was curious about nature, and so that's what drew me into the STEMS field, primarily physics and chemistry.
Wow.
And so when I got into college, realizing the music path as a major will sort of corner me into a subject matter that I was not really sure about, I pivoted. And so within the first couple of weeks of college, I was challenged by trying to convince my advisor that, yes, I got into college because of music, but I'm actually pretty good at STEMs as well.
Interesting.
And so I pivoted, and it worked out.
Wow. Yes. That is so interesting. I didn't realize that. And so how did you, so what was that conversation like in terms of convincing, going from, you were coming in as a music major and, it was like a left turn to, to STEM.
So, a lot of long stares, blank stares.
Yeah.
So what's different about the education system in North America versus in most of Asia and Europe is that the high school system has a different system of assessing the caliber of students. So I did these exams called the O-levels and A-levels, which are equivalent to grade 10 and 12, respectively. And so I had those grades, which were reasonably good, but there was no form of comparison. I was probably one of the first students at Wabash at that time in the 80s that had come to college with those kinds of exam grades. So I literally had to convince my professors that I was actually very versatile in these subject matters. So I took exams. They wrote some exams, and while those first few weekends in college are spent with a lot of fun activities,
you were studying.
I was actually taking exams.
Wow.
And so it worked out. And it worked out sufficiently well because I placed higher than where I would have started as a first year.
Oh, that's so interesting. But, and I wonder, how they, I guess there have been studies about music and, I guess computational skills or math skills and how they transfer into, and I have no resource to quote, but they say that, kids who have studied music in school tend to do better, academically. And I wonder if that, is the same case for you.
There's definitely a lot of research in that area, but I think the best example, evidence of that being a fact, is our students here at
Yeah,
Yale,
yeah.
right? There are a lot of scientists, students who want to become scientists or are great at STEMs in general, are also great artists, great musicians,
Wow.
and vice versa as well. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of patterns within the musical language that have periodicity, and that periodicity also exists in nature.
Wow.
So I'm sure you've heard of the periodic table.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So that's that. The periodic table becomes much more understandable if you forego the necessity to remember things, but rather understand the concept of the periodicity. And so the musical instrument, most musical instruments, piano as an example, has that same sort of periodicity.
Wow.
You know, octaves of the white keys being a certain number and the black keys being a certain number, and that sort of similar periodicity also exists in the periodic table.
Wow, that is so interesting. So I didn't know this about you. So do you still play?
I do. I can say I do now versus about a year and a half ago. While I was passionate about music, always have been, I sort of gave up the craft as the burden of excelling in my profession became very burdensome. So I took a hiatus.
Okay.
All right. And I have to confess that I enjoyed music vicariously through our children.
Oh, interesting.
My son played the violin at a pretty high level in his early years. I wish it continued, but he found other interests. Our daughter was brave enough to pursue music in the most unusual manner, which is almost self-taught.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I have to confess that it is her pursuit of music as more like a hobby, but serious enough that she was able to dedicate sufficient enough time that kept that interest of coming back to music for me alive.
That's awesome.
So moving to Trumbull, the one of the best things about having access to college spaces is the access to a variety of great pianos. And one of them happens to be at our house.
Yes, I saw
we live
one.
in.
Right.
I say it's our house, but it's actually the Trumbull Head of College house. And so having access to a piano and nobody, watching over you has been a breath of relief, fresh outlook, experimentation. So I've been getting back to it slowly.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a full circle hiatus of about 20 plus years.
Wow. That's so interesting. And you mentioned before you pivoted in college that you also did performances and things like that and concerts and
that's going back to the high school years. So as I mentioned, I was enjoyed playing music and I experimented not only on my own, creating music, but also collaborating with others, getting together with other musicians who played different instruments. And we did fairly well. We had concerts where we raised money, and most of our incentive was to create money for some cause, usually for charity. And that was a major activity. On the side, I played music alone, usually in various basically hotels within the Dhaka city that had instruments of the right sort, where some background music would be enticing for the clientele.
Interesting.
So that was one way. The other way I made some music, money off of music was I also taught how to play the keyboard or the piano, which was very helpful for the initial couple of years in college.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Really interesting. And so kind of jumping back into like your college years and then moving into your studies when you pursued like your PhD and so on. What was there a particular interest that made you narrow down the focus, or what was there something that sort of sparked your interest or passion in that area?
So that's a great question. So some of my high school professors were actually very key in laying the foundation of my interest in science and physics and chemistry specifically, but also mathematics being, the language of science. But when I got into college, as I said, I pivoted and I was able to place at a higher level than I would be expected to, which was surprising to a lot of the faculty within the chemistry department. I was a chemistry major. So one of the professors that I had the first class with, and the first class was PChem in physical chemistry, learning quantum mechanics. And that course is usually sort of the decider class that basically determines whether somebody is to pursue further onto that major or sort of pivot into another discipline. I found a lot of interest in that subject, learning a particular tool called nuclear magnetic resonance from a professor named Mike Fuson, who ironically enough, earned his PhD at Yale a few years prior. So learning this tool at an early age, first year of college, and understanding it at a level which showed me the potential of that technology. And that's still true today. So my main area of expertise is in magnetic resonance. The word nuclear has been dropped out of that terminology, especially when it's applied to medicine, because the word nuclear has various negative connotations. So I learned magnetic resonance, the potential of it at a very early age, and it has this rejuvenating potential as a technology because its application is pretty wide. Especially in medicine.
Interesting.
And that's true to today. What led me to Yale was actually one of the pioneers of that technique, magnetic resonance, in its application to studying the physiology, the biology, the chemistry of living tissue.
Wow.
And his name is Robert Schulman. He is emeritus. He is 101, I believe, at present. And so his work in part drew me to Yale, and I'm very fortunate that he found something in me that allowed me to be where I am today.
Yeah, that is amazing. And like I read in your bio that your career at Yale is for 3 decades, and I mean that's amazing. So what, if you don't mind sharing, like is there something that is just kept you, here? Like, is there something that just keeps you wanting to continue your work at Yale versus other institutions? Is it, and on top of it all, of all of this amazing research that you do, and being head of Trumbull College. One of my next questions is just how do you juggle all of that? But yes, like what
kept me here?
Yeah, what keeps you here?
So that there are several layers to that answer. So let me see if I can tackle it. So after finishing my PhD, the job market was limited in some ways, in part due to the cuts for federal funding for scientific research. But I was fortunate enough to find a great postdoc at Yale, and it was very prolific. I found great mentorship through several colleagues who are still here today, specifically Doug Rothman, who is still a faculty in the same departments I belong to, as well as Andy Petrov, who's a professor in neurology. I believe he's just became emeritus last year.
Oh, wow.
So great mentors, great collaborators, very prolific postdoc stint. And unofficially, I accepted an offer to be at another institution. Suffice it to say, I won't name it.
Okay.
Suffice it to say, this institution was one of our peer institutions, but further south.
Okay.
And it was in the summer of '98 that I met my better half, Anita, and she was living in Philadelphia at that time. And New Haven to Philadelphia was a lot closer
Yes.
than the other city, which shall remain
nameless. Yeah.
Than Philadelphia. So I chose to stay on at Yale, partly because of the proximity of having, Anita closer, but also the fact that there were some very interesting things happening within my discipline, but also the beginnings of what biomedical engineering became as a department.
Wow.
So I was actually involved in the formation of that department from its earliest years.
Wow, yeah.
And that has paid huge dividends over the years. But yeah, I think people commonly speak about the quality of students and scholars that an institution like Yale can attract. That is obviously one of the primary reasons. But the other reasons is really the openness of Yale as an institution to collaborate across boundaries, across departments. So it's really the access to the amazing collaborators that I had here that would have to be rebuilt wherever I would have gone to. So from then to even now, I would say that is the primary factor for which I have chosen to remain at Yale. I hope that remains true going into the future. But yeah, I mean, it's the quality of students, scholars, but also the collaborators that we have access to. Now, the second part of your question, which is an interesting one, why? How can I juggle the scientific load with all of the responsibilities with the head of college? So I guess the primary reason is the main reason I'm still in academia, and I never second guess that decision, is the fact that I've found inspiration not only through my collaborators, but primarily through the younger people that I happen to work with. Sometimes the inspiration happens within the lab community, in working within the laboratory, but also within the classroom. And a lot of papers that I've written, a few of the research directions I've chosen have really come about because of that collective inspiration. So the head of college gives that position gives access to that form of inspiration magnified.
Really?
So I guess the primary factor is the access to inspiration, and I truly mean that. The amazing discipline that some students have. I mean, I have a tremendous amount of respect for our student athletes, for example.
Yes.
I played a little bit of soccer in college, but certainly not at the level a lot of our D1 athletes perform at. The amount of discipline, the amount of camaraderie, collaboration that these students practice day in, day out is one form of inspiration. But also the amount of thought they put for the questions they ask, be it questions they ask in the classroom, but also for the various events that now I get to participate. They're just very deep, well thought out questions. So it's the access to instant inspiration.
Yeah.
But I guess the secondary reason is that now our commute is almost next to nothing.
Yes. Which is also nice.
which is great. So
right.
I've saved, both Anita and I save a lot of time because of having almost next to no commute time.
Yeah.
And so I actually am spending more time in the lab on designated days now than I was before.
Wow.
A little bit more disciplined about time. And so collectively, I think I hopefully haven't missed too much taking on this role, but I hope it remains true into the future as well.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
Yes. And it's so true. Like, we don't even realize my commute ranges from a half hour. It could be a half hour to an hour sometimes.
Yeah.
And like you said, getting back that time and realizing, depending on what you do with the time, but I can imagine it makes such a huge difference, because literally getting an hour to 2 hours back in your day, it opens up the opportunity to focus on other things, or even just to have, time to yourself,
Sure.
Just to decompress a little bit. And so this is really fascinating. And I, like I said, I know nothing about biomedical engineering, so I couldn't possibly ask a question and sound, intelligent in terms of all the scientific stuff. But I'm curious, like, what excites you the most in your research? Like, what is there something maybe, current day that just really drives your energy to continue this in this research area?
Yeah, absolutely. So the fact that being in this department, biomedical engineering, by its sheer title of that department, it means that you're going to combine expertise across disciplines. And so that by itself means that a lot of the problems you solve are going to be very, very impactful. And that is true not only for my research, but for many of my colleagues within the Department of Biomedical Engineering. I guess our motivation is that our solutions that we come up with are going to have an impact. And sometimes we're fortunate enough to see that impact almost readily. So for my profession, what motivates me and had motivated me in the past, but still motivates me today, is how can we make the practice of the imaging that I do with magnetic resonance, more personalized, more direct to the person being imaged for the diagnosis of disease.
Okay.
And so in the old era of application of imaging, the tool was used primarily as a picture.
Okay.
A picture can convey a lot of information, but if you take a black and white picture, for example, and if you are able to transform that picture into multicolor, that color can contain additional information. So enhancing the quality of the image is one of our primary goals. And that's kind of our mantra for a lot of the technologies we develop, is how to make a picture far more meaningful to a physician for not only diagnosis but also prognosis, compared to a physician a couple of decades ago.
Wow.
And so that is actually one of our primary reasons for starting on this initiative of a startup. So this biotech startup, our motivation is to make contrast agents. So these contrast agents are dyes, materials that you inject into the body to enhance the image that you get. You can still obtain images that are obtained without dyes, but these dyes enhance the information contained. So our dyes, for which we have several patents on, are our next generation, and we call them next generations primarily because they're reimagining what dyes should do and could do. So these dyes are able to not only show where lesions are located, lesions, for example, cancerous lesions, but also what type of, how malignant or how the degree of malignancy of these lesions are.
Interesting.
And that's enabled by these contrast agents.
That's amazing.
So our basic motivation is to make things better so that with the imaging technologies, so that people can be treated earlier, they can be diagnosed earlier and therefore treated earlier, but also to use the same technology to see the effect of the therapy that they're embarking on. A lot of times, that latter part is a secondary thought. So we're reimagining the purpose of imaging in medicine, especially personalized medicine, into the future.
That is amazing, and really fascinating because as I read your bio and it mentioned degenerative disorders like Alzheimer's, and and again, I'm not a scientist, so but
no apologies necessary.
Right, but that must be fascinating in terms of how the imaging is used for that type of research with Alzheimer's, and I'm assuming things like early detection.
Correct.
So, okay.
Yeah. So I think in the decades to come, the burden that we face is not only degenerative diseases, but also the normal aging process. I mean, we're, as a society, certainly in the developed countries, but also the rest of the world, we're living longer. We're living longer at with a lot of the problems and challenges that come with natural aging, but also these other disorders, which are a consequence of degeneration that happens due to some abnormality. And Alzheimer's is a specific example where the diagnosis of that disease happens a little too late. And I think I mentioned this in my work that we do. We study physiology and chemistry of the living tissue using our tools, magnetic resonance methods. And there's enough evidence to promote the idea that if we can pinpoint some of these physiological changes and these chemical changes that are occurring before the lesions or the degeneration that forms, which can be imaged by conventional techniques, the diagnosis would be earlier, and therefore, hopefully, treatments can begin earlier. So a lot of the methods that we employ to study Alzheimer's and related diseases are driven by physiological and metabolic markers.
Wow.
We're getting close to that goal, but our primary factor is being able to, encourage the openness of collaboration across disciplines, so that we can, put in ideas from different disciplines to come up with novel solutions.
Wow. This is so fascinating. I am always fascinated by those who, people like you who do this kind of research, and really, you've dedicated your life to research like this and how it benefits, even going down to just one person, and, their quality of life. Like a quick example, and this is not related to biomedical. Well, maybe it is because I'm not a scientist, but my youngest son, while I was pregnant with him, and this was maybe maybe it is related. This is around 20 weeks when I was pregnant. Through the ultrasound, they found a cyst in his lung. And I was just, first of all, I'm amazed that, assuming whatever size he might have been, that they could even detect something like that through imaging. And so long story short, they did find a cyst. It was scary because, babies don't, the survival is not very high, depending on the severity. And, I was monitored until throughout my entire pregnancy, and everything seemed to be fine. And, he's 11 years old now. So, but yeah, for me, as a mom and, having my son as the patient, they did surgery when he was about 6 months old to remove the cyst. And even that was amazing to me because it was done laparoscopically. Do I have that right? The right term?
Yeah.
And I just find, I was just amazed by, medicine. You know what I mean? Like just the fact that someone who knows what they're doing, and knows how to take care of this situation. And I, for me, I'm just so thankful for people like you who dedicate your lives to doing this kind of research that really, it really does ultimately affect someone's life. And, I was just so thankful that they could detect it early and know that people who have studied what to do, how to do the surgery and how to, all of these things. And that's what's I find so fascinating is just how your research impacts lives that people you haven't even met or people you don't know. And how amazing that, I just find that to be so amazing because it's, without it, I mean, without modern medicine, I don't know what would have been the outcome for my son, for example. And yeah, I'm so thankful for people like you and who do this. And because, yeah, I mean, it affects all of our lives, right? Like it's just amazing to me. And yeah, I don't know if that kind of, do you think about, I mean, does that really pop into your mind as you're going about your daily schedule and doing this kind of research? I mean, the impact you have on probably so many lives.
Yeah,
I just find that amazing.
First of all, thank you for sharing that. That's an amazing story of a great outcome, and I'm glad that he's now 11 years old. So that is a classic example of what early diagnosis means.
Yes, yes.
And so that being driven by basic science research, credit to the amazing surgeons that actually, who actually took part in actual removal of this cyst, using another technology that is essentially has a camera that guides the probe where it needs to go. So that is a classic example of the type of collaboration that discipline like biomedical engineering sort of promotes. And while I don't have equivalent stories of that immediately impacting people, we are confident that a lot of the things that are being done within laboratories academically have two primary outcomes. One is they either have great entrepreneurial sort of outcome, and that too has its value, creates jobs, creates opportunities for the next generation, develops the field through competition across different industries to make techniques better and lower the cost of employing these techniques. On the other side, they also have the benefit of making their way into medical practice. So the technique that was employed on your son is a technique that was truly tailored to looking at inside the body as non-invasively as possible using ultrasound.
Wow.
So, yeah, and you actually raise a very important point. Can one technique give everything to a physician that they need to have to make a decision, a call on a particular diagnosis? My answer would be no. So it is the collective information gathered by different types of imaging techniques, but also non-imaging techniques that can convey the more complete picture of for the given patient. But yeah, I mean, day-to-day medicine is actually as personalized as it can be, right? So it is that drive of making diagnosis as personalized as possible that motivates us today.
Yeah, that's amazing. And if no one has told you thank you, thank you. Thank you. Seriously, thank you for the work that you do. Because I just find it so fascinating because if people like yourself did not do this kind of research, I personally, I've been affected where, whether, for example, my father, he passed away in 2019, but he battled cancer for a very long time. But his treatment over that time was due to, modern medicine and detection and, like you said, the collaborative effort of, the detection, but also pharmaceuticals and, all of these other things that prolonged his time with us. And we were thankful for that. So like I said, if no one has said thank you, thank you. Thank you for what you do. So imagine, we're almost up on an hour, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about your experiences in the college, but we already talked about your interactions and what inspires you from students. I'm curious how do you sort of decompress or find time for yourself and doing the things that you enjoy?
So we love to travel as a family. So whenever the breaks come up, we try to make full use of them. And Anita and I have always loved to travel. Before there were children and with children, we've traveled the world. And I think our children are more grounded because of that, I believe. So we love to travel. We continue to do that amidst our busy schedule. Our next best favorite destination is the next place we'll go to. So I think as a family, we tend to travel more with specific destinations in mind. Recently, we were just in Morocco.
Oh, wow.
And we're contemplating where to go next as a family. But so travel, but also other ways that we can rejuvenate, recuperate. As mentioned, Anita and I do a lot of things together, not only within the college, but to tune out from that. We enjoy theater. And Anita is a great advocate of theater within Greater New Haven. Has been and still continues to be. So we enjoy that. But when time avails, obviously spending time with other crafts that I still want to, be good at. I have quite the record playing ping pong.
Oh, it's
within the college system.
Really?
Davenport is our nemesis. But so ping pong, I try to play more and more of the piano whenever I can. But also just trying to read things that I've been piling up that I haven't had the time for. But that's important. You raise a very important point, is that our daily schedules, our work schedules are such that we have very, spared moments for recuperation. So whenever that avails, you got to take full advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And I, especially now, I think I've been more mindful of that. Like, especially when your body tells you like you need to slow down or, actually rest or sleep. And I tend to forget that. So I'm kind of a night owl, and I really had to stop, my certain habits of just, you can't run on 4 hours, 5 hours of sleep, things like that. So for me, this was so fascinating, and I'm so glad I had a chance to have a conversation with you and get to know you today, because it took us a while to schedule, but I realize it's like, you have a super busy schedule between your research and being a professor and head of college. And, again, I find that to be amazing to juggle, all of these different hats and, and to be good at it, right? to do all of these different things. So I wish we could talk longer, but to wrap up our conversation today, I'm curious if you could share looking back on your career so far, and your experience being in the college and everything, are there certain core values that have shaped, we talked about community and like you said, food bringing people together. And I know that Anita has also mentioned that too, that's sort of at the core of community and building relationships. So I'm wondering if you could share more about how you approach your leadership in the college, and are there certain core values along with the community building and or maybe even just in life in general, are there values that you hold dear?
Yeah, that's a great question. Tough one.
Yes.
But I would say that in terms of, so leadership is a buzzword, but I think what got me to where I am is really realizing that it's not I, it's not me, it's we. So I've tried to be, whenever possible, to advocate. Advocate for the discipline that I, belong to. Advocate for the people that I'm in charge with. So advocacy, in many ways, is part of my mantra for leadership, but also being transparent through the process. So leadership by advocacy and transparency is my motto, I think. But ultimately, per individual, I think try not to second guess ourselves too much. It's prevalent with an institution like Yale to have these doubts, but I think what's kept me going through some difficult times is believing in the foundation that we already have, because it got us to where we are, each of us, right? And realizing, and this is humility really, realizing that inspiration can come from anywhere, right?
Absolutely.
So giving time to people. So I try to reply to almost every request of this opportunity, internship, from even high school students whenever I can. And so finding inspiration from anywhere is that you can't predict it. So leaving doors open for that opportunity is always quite important. So I think trusting in your instincts, in your foundation, and leaving the door open to find inspiration from unexpected places, peoples. So those are my principles that I've relied on. I hope I can instill that in others.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, even just being here today, like I said, I appreciate that you're willing to give your time and allow me to get to know you. And I like what you said about advocacy, which is so important, especially nowadays. Do you find that in terms of being head of college, do students come to you often for whether it's an interest or a problem, or how do you handle advocating for students?
So each of my responses is tailored to the student, to their needs. So some of our students, not just college students, but also the graduate students, extremely talented. They come with a lot of achievements already, and sometimes realizing when you hear a no to a certain query can be difficult. So I try to instill in them that sometimes that sort of negativity, on the other side of that lies positivity. And they're actually close enough. When you're living through that negativity, it's very difficult to see the positivity on the other side. Having had the experiences that I've gone through, I can truly say that with confidence. And that's part of being an adult, right? Yeah. And we as adults can say that, and sometimes the recipient of that advice can find it difficult because you're not going through that challenge. So I try to give advice, suggestions based on that philosophy. Perseverance is part of it.
Yes.
And I think students have appreciated that, but each of my responses to the students are tailored to their to their needs,
to their situation.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wow, this has been really cool. Just having a conversation with you and feeling like I learned something about biomedical engineering, which I just find it so fascinating. And to kind of close out the episode for me, and I'm curious in terms of your research, do you have advice for our listeners or for students who, maybe have an interest in that field or just pursuing a STEM field? I found the fact that you started out as a music major, which I love that story because it kind of goes back to kind of the core of being here at Yale College and trying to get students to explore. Just because they may have one major doesn't mean that they can't explore all of the other things here at Yale College. So I'm curious if you have advice for our listeners in terms of your own experience where, like you said, you had some interesting looks when you decided to pivot. So what would be your advice for students who may be in a similar situation?
Yeah. Well, I would say don't be afraid to pivot, right? I think to pivot, to consider pivoting means that you have options.
Yes.
Right? So sometimes that pivoting can be your salvation.
Yes, yeah.
And so having that freedom, sometimes it's forced, but having that freedom to pivot means that you have more than you currently may be aware of your capabilities. So, but in terms of the discipline that I belong to, STEMs in general, but biomedical engineering specifically, is I think building a foundation is very important, especially at the college level. So that foundation is what will allow you to pivot into other interests, into your future as well. I'm biased towards this discipline. At one point, biomedical engineering was one of the most popular majors. We're trying our hardest to make sure that it becomes that soon enough. It's a major that will enable students to pivot in a variety of directions.
Interesting.
And so it's a very versatile major. But all disciplines within STEMs will lay the foundation for one to pivot should they choose to pursue another direction after college.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, and as I told you, I have a ton of questions, but limited time. So, so I never get to all the questions. But for me, thank you so much for just taking time out today and sharing your story. I find it, to be so fascinating and interesting. And I hope that, like you said, what our listeners get out of hearing your story is to not be afraid to explore or to pivot. And, just to hold those core values close. And it sounds like even from childhood, you had all of these experiences that sort of led into not just your interest in STEM, but like you said, your advocacy and making connections. You talked about the reason or what keeps you here is your connections with all of your colleagues and other researchers and things like that. And I hope that everyone takes that away to apply to their own situations in their lives. So just thank you. This was amazing to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you for persevering through my changing of schedules.
Yes.
And you are such an amazing person to extract.
Thank you.
some unexpected answers.
Yes.
So I hope this conversation is meaningful and helpful to others.
Absolutely. I think I absolutely think it will be, because for example, I didn't know you were a music major. I just automatically assumed that you went straight into science early on. So that was really fascinating. And I just appreciate, I think, and I'm speaking for myself, but if I were to just read your bio and having not met you before, I would almost be intimidated. I would be intimidated to have, because again, I'm not a scientist, and coming here today, I'm even thinking, okay, what am I going to ask? Because I know nothing about this area. I could ask you about computer stuff, but I couldn't ask you about biomedical engineering. So, so I would almost be intimidated to just have a normal conversation with you. And I think it's just for me, it has been a key, lesson learned in doing this podcast is just, no matter what backgrounds we all have, that we're still just, we're just human beings, and to not be intimidated to have a conversation, because once you make those connections, and they're meaningful, right? They're getting to know how you grew up and all of these different things. It changes the dynamic, right, of how we interact, and just to not be afraid to connect with people. And so,
in a nutshell, if I understand you, each of our journeys is unique, and we may think each of our journeys is very personal to us, but I think what you're saying is that our journey, the story of our journey, has value, may have value for others.
Correct. Yes.
So thank you for sharing the little of your journey as well.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely.
But I would love to see a podcast with you as the person.
I'm not as fascinating as my guest. So, but thank you. I know I've heard that question, and we started to plan it, and then I chickened out. But
I'm volunteering to ask those questions.
Interesting. I know I have a few volunteers, and I'm like, how am I going to pick who's going to? But thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said, I'm not as fascinating as my guests, but this is it's just been an awesome experience for me, because I I've been in the college for about 13 years, and I never, early on, I just never really connected with my colleagues. I really just, came in, did my work, and went home. And it has just changed. And I'm totally being honest here. It's been life changing for me because getting to know everyone's story and what makes you, and what experiences led into who you are. For me, it just changes. It changes how I connect with people in general, and I'm grateful just to have the opportunity to do this and share it with with listeners who also want to find that connection. Because like I said, I if I were to read your bio, I would maybe think, oh, what do I have in common, or what would I possibly have in common with you? But then hearing your story, you start to see like, oh, we have different experiences, but there are a lot of commonalities, right? And I feel that human connection is so important, and
Absolutely.
understanding each other. And so, I know I thanked you probably a dozen times today, but, really honestly, thank you. And I'm just going to end on that note. So, yes, this was awesome. So thank you, Fahmeed.
My honor.
Yes.
Thank you.